They said he vanished without a trace, but evil, it doesn't disappear. It hides. It waits. And sometimes it writes back. I'm not proud of what I did. I was young. Curious. Hungry for stories, but when he chose me, curiosity became a curse. It began in 1969, the year of chaos, riots in the streets, man on the moon, and the Zodiac's cryptic words splashed across every newspaper headline. I was a junior reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle, chasing stories that never made the front page. Murders, accidents, scandals, each one blending into another, until his letters arrived. The first time I saw one, I didn't know what I was holding. A plain white envelope, hand-addressed in precise, military script, to the editor. Personal. Inside, an intricate pattern of symbols, numbers, and a message that would haunt me for decades. I like killing people because it is so much fun. I remember that line because it felt playful, almost childish, like the ramblings of someone who believed death was a game. My editor, Tom Greer, read it aloud in disbelief. The newsroom went silent. The police were already aware of 2 unsolved murders that matched the Zodiac's supposed confession. But here's what nobody knew. He'd sent another letter, directly to me. It arrived 3 days later, postmarked from Vallejo. No one else received it. The handwriting was the same, the tone identical, except this time, it was personal. You saw the pattern, didn't you, Mr. Hale? You're the only one who noticed. Let's play a game. Solve this, and I'll tell you who I am. I laughed it off at first. Probably a prank, I thought. A sick joke from someone who'd read the paper. But the next morning, when I stepped out of my apartment, there was something taped to my door. A Polaroid. Of me, taken from across the street, in the rain, the night before. That's when I started keeping a journal. I worked late that night, studying the symbols, trying to make sense of the code. There was something deliberate about it, almost artistic. Letters, circles, triangles, and crosshairs. The same crosshairs he used as his signature. But this one, it wasn't random. Each symbol corresponded to a letter in my name. By the time I cracked it, the message spelled out something that made my blood run cold. You're getting warmer. I called the police, but they brushed it off. Public paranoia, they said. Probably some copycat. But deep down, I knew better. The Zodiac was watching me. Over the next week, I started noticing patterns in the ordinary. A man in a dark coat on the corner every evening. A phone ringing twice, then silence. An envelope slipped under my door with the words, "Do not ignore me." I didn't sleep. I barely ate. And every night, I'd hear it, the faint sound of a typewriter clacking in the distance, somewhere in the fog. One evening, I went to a small cafe off Market Street to clear my head. I was staring into my coffee when a man sat down across from me. He was older, maybe in his 40s. With sharp eyes and a knowing smirk. He wore a brown leather jacket that looked worn and comfortable, too ordinary for what he was about to say. "You're the reporter chasing ghosts, aren't you?" I froze. "Excuse me? Zodiac. That's what you're chasing. Don't bother. He doesn't want to be found." I laughed nervously. "And you know that because..." He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Because I've seen him." My pulse quickened. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled faintly, stood up, and left a napkin on the table. Written on it was a single word, "Run." By the time I turned around, he was gone. That night, my apartment door was unlocked. Nothing stolen. Nothing broken. But on my bed lay another envelope. Inside, another cipher. And underneath it, written in red ink. "You should have listened." That night, I recorded everything. My fear. My doubts. My voice trembling as I whispered into a cheap tape recorder. If anyone finds this, know that I tried. The code isn't just words. It's a map. The recording ends abruptly. The last thing you can hear is my breathing, and another breath, heavier, behind me. When I woke up, the tape was gone. All that remained was a note pinned to the wall. Nice try, Mr. Hale. See you soon. That was the night I realized the Zodiac didn't just kill for pleasure. He killed to be understood. 3 months passed before I heard from him again. Or maybe it was just that I started hearing everything differently. The phone ringing in the dead of night. The faint tapping on my window, like fingertips tracing the glass. Even the rain had a rhythm to it, a coded message in every drop that hit the pavement. I'd moved apartments by then. Changed jobs. Tried to outrun the madness that had rooted itself in my bones. But you can't outrun something that knows your every step before you take it. The Zodiac wasn't just sending letters anymore. He was communicating, in ways no one else could see. It began one quiet evening in late October. I was listening to a small AM station out of Vallejo, a habit I'd picked up to drown out my thoughts. Then, just before midnight, the host's voice glitched, replaced by static and a faint, rhythmic tapping. 3 short bursts. Too long. 3 short again. Morse code. I scribbled it down, heart pounding. When translated, it spelled one word. Listen. Then silence. I turned off the radio, but the tapping didn't stop. It was coming from inside the wall, from my neighbor's apartment. When I knocked, no one answered. The landlord said the unit had been vacant for over a month. The next morning, the police found a dead rat nailed to my door. Its tail was arranged in the shape of a crosshair. That same day, another envelope arrived. No postmark this time. Just my name, scrawled in the same meticulous handwriting. Inside was a sheet of paper filled with symbols again, but this one was different. Each symbol was drawn over faint newspaper clippings, my old articles. Every story I'd ever written for the Chronicle was torn, shredded, and rearranged like a collage of my failures. At the bottom, a message. You've been talking to me all along. That night, I drank until I couldn't feel my hands. I tried to convince myself it was all paranoia, that someone was just trying to mess with me. But deep down, I knew. The Zodiac had found a new way to write. He wasn't sending letters anymore. He was writing through me. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a private radio producer named Emma Sloan. She'd been following my stories, fascinated by the Zodiac's return. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her for an interview. We recorded in her small home studio. The red light blinked as I told my story, the letters, the codes, the fear that never left me. She listened intently, her pen scratching against paper. But halfway through, the lights flickered. And her recorder began to play something that wasn't me. A distorted voice. Male. Calm. Almost amused. You shouldn't have told them, Daniel. Emma froze. What was that? She whispered. I didn't know what to say. The recording was live. There was no tape. No overlay. Just a voice that wasn't supposed to exist. He's listening, I muttered. He's always listening. Emma reached out to unplug the microphone, but before she could, the power went out. Total darkness. In the silence, a lighter flicked. Once. Twice. Then, his voice again, clearer this time, run. When the lights came back, Emma was gone. Her chair was still spinning. The only trace she'd ever been there was the recorder, still blinking red, and a single sheet of paper beside it. A cipher. This one took me days to decode. Every symbol represented a date and a location, a map of California, littered with excess marking unsolved murders. The final line was written in plain English. "You're next." I went to the police again. They humored me this time, took the letter, even filed a report. But by the time they traced the locations, it was too late. Each mark corresponded to a crime scene that had just been discovered that week. Someone was still killing, and they were using me as the messenger. 2 nights later, a small brown package appeared outside my door. No return address. No note. Inside, an old cassette tape labeled only with my initials, DH. I played it. Static at first, then a faint hum, like breathing. Then, my own voice. "If anyone finds this, know that I tried." The code isn't just words. It's a map. The same words I'd recorded months earlier, before the first tape vanished. But now, there was more. Another voice, layered beneath mine, whispering. "You never stopped playing, Daniel." I dropped the tape and stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. It wasn't a recording. It was a message, to me. And that's when I realized every time I thought I'd been documenting him, he'd been documenting me. A few nights later, I woke up to the sound of someone humming outside my window. A familiar tune, slow, off-key. I peeked through the blinds. A man stood on the street, facing away, his hands in his pockets. He wasn't moving. Just standing there, humming that same haunting melody. I watched for what felt like hours until he finally turned around. He was wearing a mask. A crudely drawn zodiac crosshair scrawled across it in red ink. And in his hand, my missing tape recorder. He raised it slowly, pressed play, and my voice filled the night air again. "You're getting warmer." Then, he dropped it to the pavement and walked into the fog. When I ran outside moments later, he was gone. But the recorder was still there, cracked open, its tape mangled. Inside the battery compartment was a small slip of paper. Episode 2, The Dead Speak in Patterns. He was writing my story. Every killer wants to be remembered. But he didn't just want to be remembered, he wanted to continue. And I was his continuation. It started again with a dream. I was standing in a fog-covered field, the sound of an old rotary phone echoing endlessly. When I picked it up, there was no voice, only a faint series of tones. A pattern. When I woke, the sound was still there, coming from my living room radio. The dial glowed faintly even though it was unplugged. I remember staring at it, too afraid to move, as the static began to pulse like a heartbeat. Then a voice came through. Soft. Calm. Familiar. "You're still listening, Daniel." I threw the radio against the wall. It shattered, wires spilling like veins. But the voice didn't stop. It echoed from the shards, from the floorboards, from inside my head. "We're almost done." I hadn't left my apartment in weeks. The walls felt closer each day, as though the building itself was leaning in to listen. My phone rang constantly, but every time I answered, there was nothing, just that same faint breathing on the other end. One night, desperate for fresh air, I walked to the corner store. On the way back, I noticed the payphone across the street was ringing. Non-stop. Shrieking into the night like a wounded animal. Against every instinct I had left, I picked it up. "Did you find her?" The voice was male, but distorted, like it was running through a broken speaker. "Who?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Emma. You never found her body." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Look closer." The line went dead. When I turned around, there was a white envelope taped to the glass of the phone booth. Inside, a photograph. Emma's studio, abandoned. Her tape recorder on the desk, covered in dust. But something about the photo was wrong. In the reflection of the studio mirror behind the desk, there was a figure. Tall. Motionless. wearing a mask. And standing right beside him was me. The next few days blurred into one another. I barely slept. Every electronic device I owned began picking up strange signals, bursts of code hidden in static, numbers hidden in songs, whispers hidden in commercials. I started recording everything, obsessively documenting every sound, every flicker of the lights. When I slowed the recordings down, I discovered something horrifying. The static wasn't random. Every burst of noise was forming letters. Letters that spelled one phrase over and over again: tell my story. At first, I thought he wanted me to write about him. But then I realized. He wanted me to finish it. The Zodiac had become more than a man. He was a voice, disembodied, digitized, immortalized in the static. And somehow, he'd chosen me as his final narrator. That night, I tuned into the same AM frequency that had first whispered to me months ago. Midnight. Channel 780. The host's voice was normal at first, then began to falter. Tonight's broadcast is dedicated to, Daniel Hale, investigative reporter. My blood turned to ice. Daniel, if you're listening, he's not done. Then the feed dissolved into static again. And within that static, the same voice I'd heard in my dreams began to speak. Episode 3. Voices in the Static. You're almost there. I screamed at the radio, begging for it to stop, but the voice only laughed, that low, guttural sound that felt like it came from behind my own teeth. Then, a click. Silence. And then, music. A soft piano tune. The same melody Emma used to hum when she was thinking. Unable to sleep, I turned on my computer and went through my recordings again. When I opened the folder, I found a file I didn't remember saving. Voice_3_final.wave. It was timestamped 3 hours into the future. The file was locked, encrypted. But I cracked it open using a decryption tool, and what played next froze me in place. If you're hearing this, you've already joined the story. The voice wasn't mine this time. It wasn't the Zodiac's, either. It was Emma's. He's not a man anymore, Daniel. He's in the airwaves. In the frequencies. Every time you listen, he grows stronger. Her voice wavered. You have to stop recording. Stop listening. Before he uses you to finish it. Then another voice, deeper, calmer, and eerily close to my ear. Too late. The file ended with a sharp, metallic click. And then my computer screen turned black. A single phrase appeared, blinking in the center. Upload complete. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, my entire apartment smelled like smoke. My radio was melted. My computer, fried. The walls were covered in ash. And across the living room wall, written in what looked like soot, was a sentence I'll never forget: they heard you. I walked outside, shaking, the early morning fog thick as cement. That's when I noticed the people across the street, neighbors, strangers, all standing motionless, facing me. Their eyes were vacant. Each one was holding a small portable radio. And all of them were whispering in unison. Tell my story. Then, one by one, they turned the dials on their radios, and the static began to play. Louder. And louder. Until everything went white. I used to think evil died with the man. But the Zodiac. He became something else. Not flesh. Not blood. Just a pattern. A signal. A story that never ends. And I was the one who gave him a voice. I don't know what day it is anymore. The clock stopped weeks ago. Or maybe I stopped noticing. Everywhere I go, I hear the static now, faint at first, then deafening. It's not coming from the radios anymore. It's coming from me. My breath hisses in the same frequency. My pulse beats in his rhythm. Every thought, every whisper, every word feels like it belongs to him now. Tell my story. That's all he ever wanted. That's all any of them want to be remembered. I burned the letters years ago. Or so I thought. But 2 nights ago, when I opened my closet, the floor was covered in envelopes, hundreds of them, yellowed and brittle with age. Each one with my name scrawled in that perfect, military handwriting. Inside, the same familiar ciphers. But when I looked closer, I saw something new. The letters weren't addressed to me anymore. They were from me. To whom it may concern, if you are reading this, it means you've joined the story. The pattern repeats. The symbols align. You are the next voice. My hands shook as I realized the truth. Every letter I'd received, every cipher I'd decoded, had been written by my own hand. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being the observer. I'd become the messenger. It was around midnight when the television turned itself on. No image, just gray snow and the soft crackle of static. Then, slowly, the image began to form. A woman's silhouette. Emma. Her face flickered like a dying flame, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and warning. "He's almost done with you, Daniel," she whispered through the static. "Once your voice fades, he'll need another." The screen glitched. For a second, I saw something behind her, a shape, tall and still, watching. Then the sound cut. The screen went black. And in the reflection, for the first time, I saw him. Not the hooded figure from the sketches. Not the monster the world had imagined. But me. A version of myself I didn't recognize, hollow-eyed, smiling, and wearing the crosshair symbol on my chest. The following morning, I woke to the sound of a typewriter. Its steady rhythm echoed through my apartment, though the machine hadn't worked in years. When I approached it, the keys began to move on their own, hammering out a message across a blank page. "Final broadcast begins tonight." Then, my phone lit up with a new notification, a live stream link titled. I didn't start it. I didn't schedule it. But when I clicked the link, I saw myself, sitting in my apartment, staring at the camera, eyes vacant. The chat filled with confused viewers. Is this live? What's happening? Who's filming this? And then, over the feed, the static began again. The voice, his voice, merged with mine, indistinguishable. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer, written by the man who lived it. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The camera zoomed closer on its own. My lips moved. Words I didn't recognize spilling out. Every cipher is a voice. Every voice, a vessel. The code is not to be solved. It is to be spoken. Behind me, shapes began to move. Dozens of them silent figures, their faces hidden behind crude masks. Each one carried a radio tuned to the same static frequency. Together, they began to chant. "Tell my story. Tell my story. Tell my story." The stream's viewer count surged, thousands, then tens of thousands, then more. Every viewer was hearing the signal now. Every listener, another vessel. And as the feed reached its climax, my voice, our voice, spoke one final sentence: "The Zodiac is not dead. He is transmitted." Then, silence. The live stream ended. The channel vanished. And so did a week later. Police found my apartment empty. No body. No signs of struggle. Just one thing on the table, an old, cracked cassette tape. When they played it, they heard only static. Until the very end, when a faint whisper emerged, "You're next." The tape has since been locked away in an evidence vault. But sometimes, officers say, when the night gets too quiet, they swear they hear it playing again. Stories never end. They only change voices. Who will tell the next one?